This is Talkback 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Wednesday, October 16th edition of Talkback. Talkback this morning is brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply. Feel confident in their discreet and knowledgeable guidance on a multitude of products and medical supplies. And by 123 Seamless Gutters. They're protecting the foundation of your future with gutter installations, repairs, gutter guards, and more. Their number, 406-240-2669. At Y West Storage, they love making room for you because they are your storage facility choice, located out at the Y on Two Smokes Way. Give them a call today, 406-510-0590. And also brought to you by Phillips Janitorial. If you need your home and or your business cleaned professionally with your satisfaction guaranteed, give them a call, 406-260-6617. That's Phillips Janitorial.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good to have you along on this Wednesday edition of Talkback. That is Mr. Nick Christensen. Good morning, Mr. Nick.
Good morning.
And we are continuing our chats, if you will, with people that make very important decisions and do important jobs here in the state of Montana. And one of those is Mr. David Sanders. And David is on the phone with us right now. David is the executive director of the Montana Public Service Commission. David, welcome. It's good to have you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Nick. You guys really provide a tremendous service to the people of Western Montana with your show. It's very informative and always very well produced and put together. And to have the voice of Western Montana on the phone with me today, that's fantastic. Thank you, Peter.
It is our pleasure to have you, sir. Now, for those who are still a little bit confused, now we've had folks on the phone the last couple of weeks who are candidates or either running for or trying to be reelected to the Public Service Commission, and there's still a little bit of confusion out there, just exactly what the PSC is and what it does. I know you wanted to address that just right out of the box, if you don't mind.
Well, I do want to address that because, the Public Service Commission provides a very important service to the people of Montana. In fact, a number of very important services. We regulate really about 7 different industries across the state, monopoly utilities, but there's different kinds of regulations that we do. The ones that get the most press are when we regulate the power companies or the natural gas companies in terms of their rates, because that's something that affects Montanans every single day. And so naturally that gets a little bit more press than the other functions. But we also regulate small water utilities. We regulate everything from garbage hauling and who can participate in the garbage hauling process through licensing. We regulate the pipeline safety programs on behalf of our federal partners at the Pipeline and Hazardous Material Safety Administration, part of USDOT. We also, in partnership with the Federal Railroad Administration, do safety regulations on the railroads for their motive power and electric equipment. So, for example, rail cars, their wheel sets, the locomotives, all of that. We do safety regulation on behalf of FRA in that industry. As I say, electric power, natural gas, water. Telecommunications is another one for landline, non-broadband, non-cellular, but landline communications. So it's really a wide range of industries that we sort of have to become experts on and regulate, and we do that with a very lean staff of just 33 people, if you can imagine that, regulating 7 different industries across this big, broad, beautiful state, and doing that with just 33 people. So it's really a complicated job, and we have 5 elected commissioners, and so there's 5 different personalities there and 5 different opinions perhaps on any issue. And so it's a lot to balance. But I think more often than not, we get that balance right.
I'll tell you what, we are up against our first break. Take a break about every 10 minutes or so. We're going to come right back. Our guest on the phone is David Sanders. He's the Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. We already have Steve waiting to visit with you and several other phone lines open. If you have a question or a comment for a guy that I guess you might say he's the Executive Director, you might say he runs the place a little bit, David Sanders. If you have a question for David, give us a call, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. We're going to come right back after this quick timeout.
AAA. Dennis Bragg with your updated forecast. We're looking at rain mainly afternoon today and then into this evening. The chance of precipitation about 80% with highs to 59 degrees. Rain likely again on Thursday, mainly afternoon and mostly cloudy with a high on a very cool 49 degrees, so a big change there. Then looking ahead to Thursday night, a 20% chance of rain before midnight. A little fog, very cold Friday morning with lows dropping down into the 20s and then sunshine returning for the weekend.
Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely and help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back, 721-1290. That's the number to call if you'd like to visit with David Sanders. He's Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. Now, we've had 2 individuals on the commission with us over the last several weeks, but David is the Executive Director, and so he's not trying to be reelected or anything. He's just providing important information to you. So let's get Steve on the line. And Steve, good morning. You're on with David Sanders. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you to you and Nick. I heard yesterday from the Camp Missoula folks that you guys booked them, so thank you very much. We really appreciate that. David, nice to meet you quickly. I shared this with your colleague yesterday when Grizzly Disposal was added as a hauler, added it to the Missoula market. Rates and service both decreased dramatically. I'm talking about 20% year on year, which is very significant for people who are struggling to pay property taxes that are going in the opposite direction. You know, we live in America where we like to think that competition creates better customer service and better pricing. However, your organization is tasked with sort of regulating some of these monopolies around the state, like the water districts that you mentioned. I asked this of your colleague yesterday, but I didn't have a chance to ask a follow-up question. In Missoula, unlike the garbage prices decreasing, we're seeing our water rates increase exponentially since the city of Missoula took over that utility from a private provider. And just to give you an example, this coming Monday, I believe, City Council is going to debate whether they approve a 9% per year for the next 3 years increase. Meanwhile, you know, Biden likes to tout inflation at 2.4% right now. So the citizenry just can't get their head around why, the utility in Missoula is in the city of Missoula, the water utility is going to charge 9% year on year, compounded over 3 years. That's a very steep increase, again, for people who are struggling. So my question, sir, sorry about the setup, is what can the legislature do this session specifically to pass a bill that would remand or mandate that your organization oversee the utilities like Missoula Water that are outright gouging citizens, harming people who are already struggling? It seems like that's your purview already. How can the legislature change that? What would need to happen exactly so that citizens like myself can get involved, find a legislator to carry a bill, hopefully get that approved by the governor, given that the city is incompetent in protecting its citizens from this price hikes and these gougings that we're seeing right now? Thank you, sir.
Good question. All right, so David, please, if you would.
Yes, thank you very much for that very well-informed and very well put-together question, Steve. This is something where we focus on the things which are within our current statutory purview and within our regulatory purview, and our power really comes from the legislature as well. So our power to regulate things is circumscribed by statute, created by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. We do not, at the Public Service Commission, as you know, regulate public water utilities like you have there in Missoula. I was a resident of Missoula not too long ago, and I know what you're talking about. That's sort of left up to the city council there. And I know that the city council, the county commission in Missoula, they have a different view of things sometimes from the way that we might regulate the utilities that we regulate. We regulate mostly private, in fact, almost exclusively private water utilities. And so we don't regulate the water utility in Missoula. I would say that if, enough citizens, though, go to the city council meeting where these rates are being discussed, one of the things that's very important about, like my job at the Public Service Commission, is the input that we get from the public. And as you know, constitutionally, the people of Montana, under Article 2, Sections 8 and 9 of the Montana Constitution, have a right to know what their government is doing, and all the subordinate governments to the state, and they have a right to participate. And so I would vigorously exercise the right to know and the right to participate in terms of gathering all the public information you can to make sure that you have a factual basis for your claims, and then laying those out before the governing body, in your case, I think the city council there in Missoula, and then laying out your claims. And if you don't get redress there, then there are other options available to you, and maybe one or more of the Missoula legislators might become interested in your cause. That does sound like a very high rate increase, but having said that, I don't want to prejudge because I haven't seen all the inputs that go into that rate request. I do know that the people of Montana and the people of Missoula have been facing extraordinarily high increases in costs over the last 4 years in everything from housing to food, to fuel, to insurance, to health care, you name it. And it seems, water being one of the necessities of life, it seems like a very large price increase there would have a disastrous effect on a number of people living on the margins.
I will tell you that one of the problems with here in Missoula, and I think with most municipal utilities, is it is a monopoly. There's no other way to create a water system that could compete with the current Missoula Water Company. So they are they could do whatever they want. And for people that can't afford it, I'm not sure exactly what their recourse is.
Yeah, you're right about that, Peter, and that's one of the things that's very essential to our role here at the Public Service Commission is because we do regulate mostly monopoly utilities, not in every case, but in most of the cases where we have regulatory authority. We sort of provide that check and balance, if you will, to unregulated monopoly power. And so we provide that regulation, and we look for sort of an evidentiary and legal basis for these claims and requests for rate increases that come from the companies that we regulate. In the case of a municipal utility, it's really up to the citizens to sort of arm themselves with the facts and scrutinize these rates, and then organize, frankly, within your community to be able to make your voices heard.
You bet. And with that, we are up against another break. We have more calls coming in. We have Nancy waiting on the line. We have Ann waiting on the line. And so we will come right back with David Sanders. He's the executive director of the Montana Public Service Commission, and he's ready for your questions. As a matter of fact, he's welcoming them. So give us a call. We'll be right back after this quick timeout.
Today on Hey.
And we are back on Talkback, having a great conversation with David Sanders, Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. And there are folks waiting to visit with you, David, so let's get right back and say hello to Nancy. Nancy, good morning. You're on with David Sanders. Go ahead.
Good morning, Gloria, and good morning, David. Okay, a couple of years ago, there was a very passionate conversation about reintroducing passenger train travel here in our state. And I just love that idea. I love the idea because handicapped people and the elderly and groups of children and people who just get sick of driving just want to leave the driving to somebody else and take a slower route to their destination. Is there a chance that we're going to see passenger train travel here again in the state of Montana? And thank you, sir.
All right, thanks for the call. Yeah, Dave Strohmeyer, one of our county commissioners, is a passionate advocate of that. So, please go ahead, David.
Well, thank you very much for that question, Nancy. And I'll say this, in terms of the role of the Public Service Commission right now, we do safety regulation on freight railroads, which is principally what we have here in Montana. We did have an Amtrak line in this state, which traverses the state, but for the most part, it's a freight rail traffic that we perform safety regulations on, as I said, those locomotives and train sets. In terms of the prospect of getting train travel here, for all intents and purposes, that is, train travel as it is in the United States, really across the United States. There's only one profitable route, so far as I know, that Amtrak has left, and that is the Acela corridor, as it's called now, between Washington D.C. and New York City and Boston, where the populations tend to be very, very densely. If you think of all the cities there, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Wilmington, New York City, cities in New Jersey, Trenton, and other places where the Acela makes stops. That's where that traffic is, and the roadbeds for passenger trains really need to be at the very highest levels of safety. We had a derailment the other day here in Montana, and it was about 13, 14 grain cars that derailed. And that's something that is under investigation now. But for passenger trains, obviously you can't have any cars derail under any circumstances. And so the roadbeds, the trains themselves, everything having to do with that has a very, very high level of safety attached to it, as we would all want. And I don't know about the prospects economically of train travel in Montana. It would, I think, as a matter of economic necessity, have to be very, very heavily subsidized by the federal government in order to be viable at all. And obviously, there would be a lot of infrastructure investment that would take place. So I don't want to sort of pour cold water on this beautiful, and actually I think it would be a magnificent trip to be able to see this beautiful state by rail. But realistically, from an economic standpoint, I don't see that happening in the near-term future. Yeah,
and was looking back at an Amtrak derailment that occurred near Joplin in Montana back in 2021, and I understand there were a couple of fatalities and lots of lawsuits, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it certainly leads the news.
It does, and Peter, I would add that one of the things that we're hoping to do, the Energy and Transportation Interim Committee of the legislature just passed a bill in committee to request that we take on 4 additional rail inspectors to expand the scope of our rail inspections behind that motive power and equipment aspect of rail safety inspections to include inspecting track, and we would also include inspections of operating procedures, which is really more the human factors which are involved in some rail aspects, in some rail accidents. So we would be covering the three most prevalent sources of rail accidents with our inspection program, with just 6 inspectors. And if you think about it, there are tens of millions, in fact, hundreds of millions of tons of cargo that move through this state on a daily basis. Everybody sees the coal trains and the grain trains and all that, and the general cargo trains. But also, we would also want to expand that program because we have 3,680 miles of track in this state, and covering that with 6 inspectors is going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge we're anxious to accept because rail safety is so important. We don't want to see a situation in Montana anything like the situation that the poor people in East Palestine, Ohio experienced just a couple of years ago, or the Amtrak thing that resulted in a couple of fatalities here in Montana. We absolutely must ensure that our railroads are as safe as they can possibly be.
You bet. And with that, we're up against another break. We have Elena and Jeff both waiting to visit with you. Our guest on the phone is David Sanders. David is the Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission, and he's here to answer your questions. And so we'll get those from Elena and Jeff, and hopefully from you as well. You can use the KGVO app to hit the Message Us button. We'll pass that along to David as well. We're coming right back after this.
Dennis Bragg with your updated forecast. We're looking at rain mainly afternoon today and then into this evening. The chance of precipitation about 80% with highs to 59 degrees. Rain likely again on Thursday, mainly afternoon and mostly cloudy with a high on a very cool 49 degrees, so a big change there. Then looking ahead to Thursday night, a 20% chance of rain before midnight. A little fog, very cold Friday morning with lows dropping down into the 20s and then sunshine returning for the weekend.
Okay, we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. I'm Peter Christian, by the way, and Nick Christensen is over there taking your phone calls and producing Talkback this morning. And I believe Elena is next, who wants to talk with Mr. David Sanders. So, Elena, go ahead, please.
Good morning, and I want to thank you, Peter, for mentioning Dave Strohmeyer. He's the chairman of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority,
right,
which has already gone through a whole bunch of hoops and is on its way to becoming a reality. So that's a done deal with Southern Passenger Rail Authority for Montana. Anyway, to go back to the Public Service Commission, I was a business office representative for a utility in another state, one that used to have a monopoly over the whole country. And whenever an unhappy customer mentioned the magic words, "I'm going to the PSC," the world stopped. Why? Because if the Public Service Commission got too many complaints, that would affect the utility's request for a rate increase. When I came to this state as a transfer, and the customer said, "I'm just going to go to the Public Service Commission," I did what I was trained to do. I said, "Hold on, I'll let you talk to my supervisor." I got the supervisor. I said, "She's threatening to go to the PSC." So, let her go. The attitude is entirely different. And maybe we would have control over these rate increases. So my question is, why doesn't the PSC initiate a similar policy and present it to the legislature to adopt it?
Well, Elena, thank you for that question. I wish it were kind of as simple as that, but It really isn't because, it probably, as you know, going to the PSC is every citizen's right. In fact, we try to make it as simple as possible so people can go to the PSC if they have an issue. For example, they can go to our helpline, PSC Help at mt.gov. And we welcome all public comments, all information that we can get from the citizens. And we get a lot of really, really good information from the citizens to help inform our decisions and to help even with matters of public safety. And so those things are really, really useful for us, and we rely on them heavily. Having said that, we can't just rely on public comments. By statute and by regulation, we can't rely solely on public comments in terms of making rate decisions or, for that matter, other decisions. What they can do is set off investigation and for us to have a look at something and to delve into it and get an evidentiary record and then make decisions based on the law and the facts about rates and other things. But we can't just rely on customer complaints. It's a big factor in terms of what we do. I can tell you, customer input was extremely important in something which that we've been working on for some time here at the Public Service Commission in the telecommunications arena, for example, that really helped inform some of our decision-making as we've been involved in negotiations with a telecom provider to improve service in Montana. So it's an important factor, but it's not the sole factor in helping us make our decisions.
David, if I may interject here, the public in Montana doesn't know that you can go to the Public Service Commission and you can write a letter to them, and that they do have some power. And it's the legislature, the law, the codes, just like you said, which regulate you. So it's up to the legislators to make that change. And if enough people complain, because we've got a lot to complain with these high utility prices. I mean, they're going through the sky, and it's ridiculous. And so I think there can be change. The public has to know. That's why I'm saying to the public, you go to the Public Service Commission, you write a letter. Everything a person should do is in writing. Because I'm sorry, people forget, oh, yeah, you make a call, and oh, yeah, and people don't have the time to go to one of these meetings and complain. So you write the complaint, you send it, and then you also send a copy to your legislature and say that you should have more control over the rate increases on a utility. And thank you for listening to me. Have a great day.
Elena, thanks for the call. David, go ahead.
Yes, and Elena, just to finish up on that, Peter and Elena, that's a great point. And we do want people to communicate with their government, not just the PSC, but yes, also the legislature. But I will tell you this, for example, because people keep talking about these rate increases. Maybe you don't know yet because it maybe hasn't hit the press yet, but just yesterday, the Public Service Commission dealt with a request for an interim rate increase by Montana Dakota Utilities. They asked for a 10.25, well, there was a 10.25% interim rate increase request that came before the Public Service Commission yesterday that was voted down on a 4-1 vote. So that interim rate increase will not be happening. The commission voted against that yesterday, 4-1, and just on October 1st, there was an automatic rate adjustment in electric rates that Northwestern charges, which resulted in about a 5.6% decrease in electric rates for Northwestern's electric customers, residential electric customers. So there are some adjustments that happen. The ones that are increases get a lot of press, and in fact, sometimes for political reasons, people blow them up even larger than they are. But in this case, it's just since the beginning of October, Northwestern's electric rates and Montana Dakota Utilities requests for a rate increase their increase was not agreed to. Northwestern's rate decrease did happen, and so it's not all a one-way street, and we do scrutinize all of these rate increase adjustments very, very carefully.
Perfect. And with that, your timing is exquisite because we're up against another break. We still have, though, Jeff, Cindy, and Dave all waiting to visit with you. And we really appreciate your willingness to talk to our listeners. And that's why you're on today, and we thank you. We're going to come right back. We'll get more of Talk Back with David Sanders, Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. By the way, other lines are open. It's 721-1290. Back after this.
For breakfast.
Thinking about retirement? Make sure a My Social Security account is a part of your plan. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can find out if you're eligible to receive benefits, compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates, view spousal benefit estimates, and more. Plan for your future. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Hey, welcome back. This is Talk Back, 721-1290. That's the number. I'm Peter Christian, Nick Christensen, producing Talk Back, taking your phone calls. We're privileged to have David Sanders with us. He's Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. And time is waxing on, so let's get some more calls in. Jeff is up next. Jeff, good morning. You're on with David Sanders. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning. Good to talk to you, David. Good morning, Montana. I actually have communicated with you before via email, David, and I just kind of wanted to address Elena's point that, if you want to get in touch with the PSC, you guys don't hide. You're in Helena. Your phone number is out there. Your emails are out there. There are links to meetings. I actually testified on behalf of the West Yellowstone plant a couple of months ago. So George Carlin had a phrase, he said, you gotta wanna. And so we can communicate with the PSC, but it's up to the individual citizens of the state to do it. Not to just sit down and grouse. There was an editorial in the Missoulian yesterday that talked about the evil monopolistic tendencies of Northwestern to try to gouge out as much profit as they can and use the most expensive energy possible. And at the center of it was this idea that you guys are kind of, the PSC, I guess, as a whole, is kind of in the pocket of big energy, and you just do their whim. Whereas there's a lot of statutory stuff out there that limits your ability to affect things, because as a privately owned business, Northwestern has, I don't know if it's contractually or through the legislature, negotiated a reimbursement rate that they say is fair to their shareholders. So, and that's what you guys have to work to when you're doing some of these rate increases. And I don't like rate increases either, but I live up on the up in Lake County, and our power comes out of the dam up here. But we have had tremendous rate increases. Why? Because not only is it the power, but it's all the infrastructure stuff, the cost of transformers and lines and maintenance and wages and everything else has gone up. So the price of water flowing through a generator hasn't changed, but everything else has. And so if you could talk to that a bit. And then also on a personal thing, we have a little subdivision up here with a community well. And what's the cutoff for, we're talking about privately owned utilities? I guess we would kind of constitute that. We're registered with the Secretary of State, but we don't go outside of our subdivision. We just charge our members, Are we something that would fall under the purview of the PSC, or are we kind of immune from that?
All right. Two good questions. Thank you for the call, Jeff. Go ahead, please, David.
Well, if your subdivision is just sort of, Jeff, if it's run through sort of an HOA, like a homeowners association, that's one thing, and those we generally do not regulate. But if there's like a for-profit entity that is supplying your water, and they have to come to us for a rate adjustment or some other question that would come before us, and we do that. We regulate a number of water utilities around the state. I can tell you that I think we have coming up on our dockets at least 7 different rate cases for different water utilities around the state. We've got, we've just had 3 energy rate adjustments that have been requested of us, and we are examining all of those things right now and doing our due diligence in terms of building an evidentiary record and gathering testimony and allowing interveners to come in and offer their testimony as well and participate in the process before we go to a hearing or public comment on any of these, should they be contested. So we look at those things all very carefully. So if it's a for-profit entity that's supplying your water, that's one thing. If it's just an HOA, some HOAs just operate sort of under the radar, if you will, in terms of our radar, and supply water for their neighborhoods. In terms of the energy regulation, electric and natural gas principally, you're right. A lot of these rate adjustments are sort of baked into the cake, if you will. That is, they either are required by statute, and our job is not to make the law. Our job is to enforce the law. And so a lot of those things come by statute, companies are allowed to recoup the money they pay in property taxes, and the property tax bills for example, a Northwestern Energy or a Montana Dakota Utilities or the former Energy West Montana. I guess it's still Energy West Montana until Northwestern's application to purchase that utility has been looked at by our agency. But it is there's a very, very complex set of statutes and case law and industry standards which we apply to any of these rate cases, and it's not a matter. Some people want to believe that we just have a giant rubber stamp and a stamp pad, and we just stamp approved on every rate case that comes before us. I can tell you that nothing could possibly be further from the truth. We scrutinize things literally down to the dollar. In terms of the allowable expenses and unallowable expenses that go into any rate adjustment. We're probably doing that more. We're scrutinizing those things as closely as we ever have. In fact, I think maybe in some cases even more closely, because we realize the rate shock that Montanans have been under on, as I say, everything from housing to energy to diesel fuel to insurance costs to everything. And so it's really important for us to exercise our responsibility to make the energy system and the other industries that we regulate as safe, reliable, and affordable as we can possibly make them.
And with that, we're up against another break. We have, thank you for the call, Jeff. We have Dave and Skip both waiting to visit with you. And our Congressman Ryan Zinke is going to be joining us at 9 o'clock this morning. He's already in the studio, got his headphones on and everything. So we're going to be talking with him in the 9 o'clock hour. So we will continue our conversation, a great conversation, by the way, with David Sanders, Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission, when we return right after this. We are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, and a few precious minutes left with David Sanders, Executive Director of the Montana Public Service Commission. Let's get Dave's call on. Dave, good morning, and thank you for holding. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have a fair amount of experience running a gas power generating plant, but it is hard for me to believe that a coal-fired power plant in this present rate of electricity rates can be profitable. And it appears to me that we're going to either need electrical rates to go up for them to be profitable, or for subsidies to happen. And what is that true or not?
All right, thanks for the call, Dave. Coal. Let's talk about coal, David, please.
Well, David, as you know, the Colstrip 3 and 4 units, which are still operating, have been a really essential source of baseload power in Montana for many years. And by baseload power, I mean this. We have a number of different sources of power that are used across Montana to give people the electricity and the heating that they need through the winter months. And the winter months are really part of the trick in terms of providing that reliable power to Montanans, because we do have a significant amount of wind energy that's generated in Montana, but those wind turbines have a hard time turning when the temperature, gets below zero, as it often does in Montana in the winter. And so when those wind turbines stop turning, and generally for safety's sake and for maintenance issues, a lot of those wind turbines stop turning at 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they shut them down, and then we don't have that source. Solar is spotty, as you know, living in Missoula in the winter as well, and that's a very, very small fraction of what we have in Montana. So we do rely on thermal energy generation, natural gas and coal, very heavily, particularly in the winter months. And if you don't have that baseload power, and of course we have hydro as well, but if you don't have that baseload power, then we can't meet those peak power demands like you would have in that January cold snap that we had earlier this year, where with temperatures were 35, 45, 48 degrees below zero. And we had to have that. In fact, Colstrip, which was down for maintenance just before that cold snap, if that hadn't come back online, we would have been in real problem, and we would have had people with serious health and emergency hypothermia issues had that not come back online, and we had that available in terms of our power generation. We ended up still buying a lot of power from out of state at a very high rate, just to make baseload demand at that point. And so we want to make sure that our system is affordable, of course, but we have to make sure that our system is reliable. Montanans are just like anybody else, except we're maybe a little tougher than most other folks. And as a fourth-generation Montanan, I like to think that. But I'm not so tough that I want my house to be 30 below zero in the middle of the winter.
Tell you what, David, we have another caller, but we don't really have time to devote. I'm going to give you the last minute and a half to wrap up, if you wouldn't mind. And what would you like the public to know about the Public Service Commission and the easy ways to get in touch with you?
Well, thank you so much for that, Peter, and also thanks to you, Nick, as your producer. I got to say, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your airwaves and be able to talk to Montanans directly. I think all of our commissioners enjoy that. I know that the Montana Public Service Commission, especially in recent years since James Brown became president and Jennifer Fielder became vice president, the agency does really place an emphasis on being responsive to Montanans, to being able to listen to what Montanans are thinking about the job that we do, and to be able to respond directly to customer requests. So if you do need to get a hold of us and you want to just provide your input to us, you can always do that. We're available by telephone at 406-444-6199. We're also available via email at pschelp@mt.gov. We really look forward to responding to comments we get from all over the state, to customer requests for information.
David?
We have a fantastic customer service staff that's available for you. And we just are honored to be able to serve the people of Montana.
Thank you for being with us, and we appreciate it. We look forward to our next visit, David. We appreciate it so much. We're going to come right back after the top of the hour, and Ryan Zinke is in the studio, our congressman running for re-election, and he's here to take your call.
This is Talkback, 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback for this Wednesday, October 16th. Talkback this morning is brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply, where their mission remains the same, to restore confidence and comfort into your daily life. Also brought to you by Phillips Janitorial. Well, they offer both residential and commercial cleaning, your home and or your business. No job is too big or small for Phillips. Their number, 406-260-6617. Y West Storage, out of the Y on 2 Smokes Way. If you need storage, just moved into Missoula, give them a call today, 406-510-0590, because at Y West, we're making room for you. And by 123 Seamless Gutters, family owned and operated. They do gutter installations, they do gutter guards, and any repairs you might need. Give them a call, 406-240-2669. They're protecting the foundation of your future.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Good to have you back, everybody. Peter Christian here, the best producer in the business, right over there. Good morning, Mr. Nick. How you doing?
Doing good.
All right, and joining us here in the studio this morning, we are privileged to have with us the Honorable Ryan Zinke, our elected representative to the U.S. Congress. It's good to have you, sir.
Great to be here. And hey, Montana, looks like we're going to get snow here pretty soon. Hey, take a look at the weather forecast before you get on the road too far.
Yesterday was 78 degrees in Billings.
It is. And
on October 15th.
And I understand it looks like it's about ready for a snow dump.
We'll see.
So if you got leaves in the yard, just rake them up.
Lines are already starting to fill up. People want to talk with you, but I know that there's something on your mind that you really wanted to share with the back and forth of campaigning. Things can get messy and sometimes nasty. So what's going on?
But there's lines. There's lines. For someone to fraudulently enter our property and film in our property and bounce on our bed, that's a bridge too far. But it didn't go there. Beyond the pale is next is a film in our driveway, to film a commercial and lie about it. And if you look at the lie, the Flathead Beacon, put out the look. It's a lie. We don't get any special privilege. Probably Whitefish just the opposite. But the commercial is based on a lie. And then filming on our driveway. As a former secretary, I've received death threats. But so has my wife. So have my kids. As a matter of fact, my dog received death threats. So, we take it very seriously. And when our family feels at ease in our own home and secure because, someone's launching vitriol attacks that are untruthful in the yard, that's beyond the pale. So, we'll get through it, but it just shows that some people have no boundaries. They're willing to do anything.
In the heat of an election, people still have to obey the law. They have to obey the rules and and common courtesy, that sort of thing. So, is there any recourse that you can have against? We're talking about Monica Trinnell, and she's been in this studio several times over the last couple of campaigns. And so, are you going to be reaching out, trying to figure out a way, or are you just going to let it pass and say, hey, this was not good behavior?
No, we're going to defeat her.
Okay.
We're going to defeat her because that can't stand. The other thing is, look, on campaigns, again, there's boundaries of I would say professional civil discourse and not. But bottom line, she's been attacking me, my family, for 4 years. Viciously, falsely. Saying not from Montana is interesting. That's a funny one. So I was born in Bozeman when my folks were going to school. I grew up in Whitefish. My father's a plumber. My mom was a real estate agent. So then I graduated high school. I played ball at Oregon. I served 23 years as a Navy SEAL. And by the way, service as a SEAL, you're still Montanan. I think you're exactly what Montanan should be. And then I come back. I'm a football coach, high school football coach, a state senator, a 3-time congressman, and a secretary. If serving your country doesn't make you a Montanan, I would say back off.
How much more do you want?
Well, it's got everyone in Montana, how long you've been here. So Zinke's been around, family's been around, 5 generations.
Hey, I was born in Hawaii.
There you go.
But I consider myself a Montanan because I've lived here since I was 12 years old. So.
Well, not only that, we're on radio, but people don't realize you're wearing a Grizz sweatshirt. So you are Montana.
All right.
You're a University of Montana. All right.
There you go. Well, we have the phone lines are really lighting up. So let's try to get one call in at least.
Let's have some fun and
take a break
and talk to Montana.
All right, Skip, you are on with Ryan Zinke. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Skip.
Good morning, Ryan, and thanks for coming on. And I know you're in Western Montana right now, and I'm sure it's going to be a dynamic week for anybody that gets a chance to hear you. I thought your resume that you just threw out there was a wonderful reason to just vote for Ryan so that he can hit the ground running when he gets back to Washington, D.C. And I was wondering, in the future here, when the state of Montana is smart enough to elect you and Troy and Steve Daines is already elected, and get Tim Sheehy elected, and send that delegation back to Washington. Is there a couple pieces of legislation, or one in particular, that delegation can really fight for in the upcoming sessions to do the best possible for Montana's future? Anything at all that you guys all get together on? Both in the House and the Senate.
Well, I think we all agree on the
Thanks for the call, Skip.
I think we all agree on the border, and it is this idea, this bipartisan border bill was somehow a good idea. One, it wasn't bipartisan, didn't make it out of the Senate, didn't even make it out of committee. So when you hear this bipartisan border bill, it would allow 1.8 million immigrants in this country before you shut the valve off. Catch and relief would be codified in law. Free. It was an amnesty bill. What our bill is, and Steve and the rest of all support, is Secure the Border Act. That's what the House passed out of committee, out of the House. Schumer has yet to pick it up. I'm sure under new leadership it will be picked up, and we'll secure the border. Things in Montana that I'm doing around recently this last week is looking at bridges, infrastructure, Noxon, look at the sewer system in Sealy Lake. A lot of infrastructure, because that makes a difference in Montana, so you can build affordable housing and have a prosperous economy.
And with that, we're up against a break. We're going to come right back. Phone lines are filling up. We have Mark, Harry, and Dave all waiting to visit with you, and several other phone lines open. And, of course, you can use the KGVO app. If you can't get to a phone, you just download the app and hit the Message Us button. We'll make sure that Ryan Zinke gets that message. We're going to come right back with more of Talk Back right after this timeout.
Call 123.
Dennis Bragg with your updated forecast. We're looking at rain mainly afternoon today and then into this evening. The chance of precipitation about 80% with highs to 59 degrees. Rain likely again on Thursday, mainly afternoon and mostly cloudy with a high on a very cool 49 degrees, so a big change there. Then looking ahead to Thursday night, a 20% chance of rain before midnight. A little fog, very cold Friday morning with lows dropping down into the 20s and then sunshine returning for the weekend.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back. Ryan Zinke, our congressman, is in the studio, and he's got the microphone, got the headphones, got the pen, he's ready to go. So let's get some more calls in. Mark has been waiting the longest. Mark, good morning. You're on with Congressman Zinke. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Thanks for being on today. Say, I wanted to just touch base with you on some things. I'm voting for you. I'm voting for Mr. Sheehy. And I expect to see some things done at the national level with the Republican Party. To put it succinctly, I think the Democrats are the cause of a lot of our problems, or most of our problems, but I'm not sure the Republicans are the solution. They've had control of the House now for the last 2 years. We didn't even get a budget out, nothing. And unless you guys are going to produce stuff, bills of consequence, I'm not sure that we're getting anywhere, and I want you to address the fact that you need to get things done.
All right, thanks for the call.
I agree with you 100%. and the Republicans had the House, we had the Senate, not 60, but we also had the presidency. And I think we fell short on a lot of things. Made some things. We became energy independent, energy dominant. The Great American Outdoors Act, when I was Secretary of Interior, we got that done. By the way, that's the largest investment in our forests and our national parks for infrastructure, because they were falling apart. Not studies, but actually get things done. On the budget side, a lot of frustration, I think, on this last Congress. We didn't have the Senate. We didn't have the executive. But we did get a lot of things done for Montana. We repaired a lot of bridges, things that don't make national headlines. But we did get a lot of things done, locally for Montana, and defended a lot of the onslaught of waters of the U.S. and things. But I share your frustration, and I think we got one shot. One is I think Donald J. Trump should be the executive. Along with that, we should have the House and we should have the Senate. And if we don't get things done, I think everyone should be fired, because we have a lot of problems. But also, our problems can't be solved from one side of the aisle. And our border is wide open. So we're going to have to figure out, number one, how to secure our border, and that's
how to re-secure the border.
Oh, absolutely, and it's not that hard. Build a wall, make sure you process in third country, empower the ICE, empower the Border Patrol to do their job. They are enormously frustrated. Right? We have the technology to see who's coming across the border, but it's like, we have the pitch, but you have no catcher's mitt. Right? We're just letting them go. And it's so bad that a border is, right now, someone comes across and just says, I live in fear. Hey, they're processed within 24 hours somewhere in the U.S. They have a work visa within a few days. They're given a medical exam, freebies across the board, and 95% of them will never show up 3 years from now when their court date. All right, so, we need to stop. It's like sinking a ship, right? The first thing you do is you got to stop the water coming in.
But let me ask you, one of the things that President Trump has stated over and over again is the minute that he takes over, if should he be elected, is that he would round up 10 million illegal immigrants, aliens, whatever you want to call them, and send them back to their countries. Logistically speaking, that is a large do. So
when you calculate, let's say 300 people in aircraft, how many aircraft would it take, right? A train leaves the station, when you're a kid.
Right.
No doubt you got to go after the rotten eggs first. And they're easy to find. These guys that have criminal records, have dumped out of mental hospitals, there's people on the terrorist watch list, those type of things. No doubt they're
but
on.
There still has to be the legal process to get them.
Yeah, well, and I can tell you, the president has a lot of latitude in this. Okay. Biden has a lot of latitude if he so chose. But it's about priority and following the law. Oftentimes, President Biden, quite frankly, doesn't follow the law, or doesn't feel like he's obligated to. Student loans is an example, right? It's a loan. Supreme Court says, you can't forgive them. I'm just forgive them anyway, which causes a lot of confusion. Hey, secure the border? Oh, no, I don't have to secure the border. Oh, yeah, you do. So I think leadership makes a difference. I haven't seen any problem that's not fixable. In Montana, you ask Montana sheriffs to round up. Montana sheriffs can round up. We've been rounding things up a long time in Montana, so I have no doubt that the sheriff in Gallatin County or pick one can go out and say, look, this is a rotten egg. I can see him right now. And you put him on ice. You turn him over ice and let ice do their job.
Okay, let's get another call in. This is Harry. Harry, thank you for calling. You're on Talkback. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
Points first. Yeah, a couple points and then a couple questions. Points is, first of all, energy. We are producing more gas and energy oil now than we ever had before. As for infrastructure, we should thank Biden for signing the infrastructure bill. But also, questions. When you were Secretary of Interior, there were quite a few accusations. I don't know if it went to charges against you. And I know you're being a SEAL, you have strong fortitude and strength. why didn't you stay and fight? I mean, you claim, obviously you say you're innocent. I can't say one way or the other, but to me, the fact that you quit puts a bit of shade. I mean, if it was me, I would say, hey, I'm innocent. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to prove to everybody that I did not do any of this. Right. So why didn't you stay and fight? And then a second question, is there any daylight between you and Trump? Because as legislature, one of their things is to be a check on the executive. So is there any daylight? Or are you just going to be a rubber stamp to Trump?
Well,
Okay.
one thing
Two
on
questions.
energy, when I was secretary, gas was about,
Tell you what, we're like 30 seconds from a break. So,
all right, let me give you energy first because really quick. On energy, gasoline is about $2 a gallon. This administration, dumping in Inflation Reduction Act, which raised costs and picked on American energy, we're talking about $4 a gallon. And the other side's being subsidized. So I'll talk energy all day, and the idea that you're going to tear down our dams, Mr. Biden, and shut down our coal strip, Mr. Biden, that will adversely affect Montana across the board. On energy, look, when I was secretary, we went from 8.3 to 12.5, but we also lowered emissions because no one does it better than the United States. The United States produces the cleanest, most efficient, best fuel that powers this economy. And coal in Montana and hydro systems are absolutely critical components.
Okay, we're going to come right back. And we have Dave and Jeff both waiting online and several other phone lines open. If you have a question or a comment for Congressman Ryan Zinke, running for re-election in the 1st Congressional District, give us a call. Lines are open. He'll be here till 10, so we look forward to hearing from you.
Montana State News Network.
I'm Dennis Bragg. Gallatin County authorities are now saying it was a 35-year-old Belgrade man who was discovered dead in his tent camping near Big Sky over the weekend. Gallatin County Sheriff and Coroner Dan Springer identified the deceased as Dustin Mitchell Kurgisum. Initially, friends who went searching for him and discovered his body Saturday thought he might have been the victim of a bear attack. But Springer says an expert from Montana FWP checked the scene and determined that he did not die from an animal attack, leading authorities to now treat the case as a homicide. The Montana Medical Examiner's Office examining human remains that were discovered in the Clark Fork River downstream from Missoula over the weekend. Investigators say the body was found in a log jam off Mullen Road, but they won't have an identity until the forensic work is complete. Conservation groups are celebrating a decision by the Montana Public Service Commission denying an interim natural gas price increase by Montana Dakota Utilities. MDU had requested a permanent gas increase last summer, amounting to more than $9 million. The utility had hoped to have the interim price hike on November 1st, giving it extra revenue while the PSC considers the larger package. The Northern Plains Resource Council and Eastern Montana Resource Council had fought the move, saying it would have a huge economic impact on residents in Glendive, Miles City, and Billings. The groups are hoping it sets a pattern for the PSC to consider other rate hikes in the future, including the $193 million request by Northwestern Energy. And the Montana Department of Health and Human Services encouraging Montanans it's time to get their updated vaccinations and shots as the weather turns colder. And we see the start of respiratory illness season that includes flu, COVID, pneumonia, and RSV for older adults. In fact, the agency says laboratory confirmed cases of influenza are already being reported across Montana. This is the Montana State News Network.
For more on these stories and others around Montana, download the Montana State News app or visit montanastatenews.com.
If I could be you,
and you could be me for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Here's a fun fact for you. The average chameleon can point their eyes in 2 different directions. On the other hand, the average human can't. So unless you're a chameleon, there's absolutely no way you can focus on texting and driving at the same time. So don't do it, unless you're a chameleon.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
We are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. Peter Christian here, Nick Christensen there. Ryan Zinke is in our studio as well. Lots of folks want to jump in and talk with the congressman, so Dave has been waiting the longest. Dave, thank you for your patience. You're on with Ryan Zinke. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. First of all, the last day of Trump administration, when he was in office, gas prices were nationwide at $2.39. Now, but I want to talk about Ukraine. You know, we made promises to Ukraine for them to give up their nuclear weapons, and we have at this moment in time hundreds of MRAPs, which you know what they are, and Bradley fighting machines laying around rusting that we could send Ukraine, and you were refusing to send them because, and it's just not what you should do. You have to support our friends. And what kind of message does that send China that we're not willing to keep our promises to help Ukraine?
Okay, thanks for the call, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, you know, as a former Navy SEAL, I've been on a lot of missions, and I have. I've never been in an operation without clearly defined objectives and a plan. So we're $200 billion in Ukraine, and yet we have no plan. And I've asked the very top of the food chain. And, yeah, I support freedom, but no blank checks. No blank checks. And I'm sure you don't want to send your kids to Donbass either, but nor do you want the Russians, in Berlin again. Now, this was a failure on the Biden administration to not have objectives. And look, to push NATO or Ukraine and NATO, they would have to do significant reform because they are corrupt. I think that's clear. And then the Crimean Peninsula, and just there's been 14 wars fought over the Crimean Peninsula, and the idea you're going to lock out Russia of their only warm water port, similarly that'd be like taking Mississippi away from us. So there's a path forward, but you need a plan, you need objectives. And look, we are not only in Ukraine at $200 billion, but we have now Iran launching direct ICBM strikes into Israel, not through their surrogates, by the way, but direct. We have China measuring the drapes in Taiwan. We're out of position in the Pacific. And we have Venezuela, which people are not talking about, but that's in our own backyard. Let's review the Monroe Doctrine. So I voted against Ukraine because there's no plan. And I was just at Knox and Bridge, Browning. I'm heading in. And I tell you, when Knox and Bridge is struggling to get a $20 million bridge, what they need, and we're just sending wild money over there. And lastly, about MRAPs, that battlefield has changed.
Would you describe what an MRAP is?
Oh, an MRAP is a really large vehicle designed to save troops as they in a IED. Improvised explosive mine environment. The bottom of it is a cone shaped, not particularly good on the battlefield, and I would say they'd not be particularly good against drone strikes because our armor, both theirs and ours, are now vulnerable to the new class of drones and UAVs.
All right, so let's get another call in. This is.
But thanks for the question.
Yes, and Jeff is up next. Jeff, good morning. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Ryan. Two questions. By the way, I did vote for you yesterday. I have my button on.
Thank you, sir.
It's NOTA 128. You betcha. Just don't let us down. But the 2 points. First of all, I was born in 1952. That's the same year that Congress passed the Immigration and Nationality Act. And Section 212F of that act says basically that the president can shut the border down for any reason. A lot of people now are talking about how we need new laws and different things for the president to shut the border down. And we don't. As a matter of fact, when Biden shut the border down earlier this year, he used Section 212F of the INA. So we don't need new laws to shut the border down. Yes, we need to address immigration. Yes, we need to address those who were born here from foreign-born parents. But we don't need another law to govern how we control the border. And I don't think people understand that is cut and dry. That's not up for debate. We have the law. And there might have been subsequent laws that modified certain provisions, but in the end, the president can say, shut it down, and it shuts down. So I think people need to understand that. And second of all, when dealing with Ukraine, I do disagree with you on Ukraine, and but I understand the underlying premise, which is what most people don't, which is that there's a difference between tactics and strategy. Tactics serve strategy, but strategy never serves tactics. Strategy is high-level planning. That's what Eisenhower did for the D-Day invasion, was strategy. The tactics were, okay, where are the ships going to go when we go across, how many, what's the timing, what's the support going to be. Those are the tactics, but the strategy overall is high-level. And most people don't understand that. And as I understand it, I think that's what you're addressing, is that you're not you don't object so much to the tactics as you do to the lack of a strategy. It's kind of a McNamara Vietnam situation, and I can understand that. But at the same time, I can understand people not wanting to leave an ally that we promised to support in the lurch. So I think we need to reconcile those two.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let you go, Jeff, and he's written all that down. We're going to come right back and cover that from the perspective of Congressman Zinke. We're up against a break. We'll come right back and address Jeff's comments. We also have Susan and Rick waiting to visit with Congressman Zinke, and several other phone lines open, as well as the KGVO app. You can send us the Message Us button, and we'll pass that along as well. Stay with us.
Montana has never...
Okay, we are back on Talkback. Ryan Zinke is prepared to answer the questions from Jeff, so please go ahead.
Jeff, you were on the mark and spot on. The president has full authority to shut down the government or shut down the border. You may recall when Trump came in, he did just that and went to court. The court said he was discriminating against Middle East terrorists. I think he was. So we went to court on that one. But the president and executives through annotated law has full authority. What our position is that says may. The president may do this. What the argument is we're saying that the president shall. And there's a big difference between I might do it, I may do it, I have the authority to do it, or you will do it. So that's what the argument is. And Secure the Border Act, it just does that. On Ukraine, I agree with you, but where I struggle is we are providing cluster bombs, long-range weapon systems, again, without a strategy or a plan, and we're tiptoeing into nuclear combat. And look, it's just not Russia. All right, this is coordinated. They're getting their arms, materials, intelligence from China. You have North Korea playing as a surrogate through China. And you have the big triaxis of what I would call evil. You have Iran, you have Russia, and you have China. And all of them count our aircraft carriers and where they're at. They look at our force disposition around the world, and they're bleeding us. They're bleeding us in Ukraine.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. And they're putting our troops now into harm's way because of the Houthi missiles that are still being assembled and delivered from Iran. And then obviously the aggressive stance in China and the Pacific, which are out of position. So I think we should be very, very careful. And when we decide to go to war, I think we should win decisively. Absolutely, get in, get out. And not have these long-term, endless wars that suck our assets and our resources and our treasure, which are our sons and daughters that are serving out there.
Okay, we're going to come. Let's get another call in. This is Susan. Susan, good morning. You're on with Congressman Zinke. Go ahead.
Two things I'd like you to comment on. First of all, when Trump was a president, there was a stark contrast in how many lack of wars there were around the world. We didn't have any. And now we have major wars and conflicts around the world, and I want you to comment on that. Secondly, when Trump was in power, we had a very organized border. We had people coming into our country legally, and they were being organized. I want you to comment on the chaos at the border, and I'm going to hang up and go back to calling voters to vote for you. And I'm going to go now.
Right. Well, Susan, thanks.
I appreciate it, and leadership matters at the very top. because the president is the commander-in-chief. And our military is the strongest ever assembled in the history of this world. We have more capability than any country, but it is leadership. And our allies do not trust us, and our enemies don't fear us. That primarily, I would say, began in Afghanistan through a series of mistakes, and then doubling up on mistakes. And then now you have Israel, which is doing a lot of what the United States should have done. I mean, for the Houthis through Iran to launch continuous missiles in the Red Sea international, territory, that affects global transportation. So it does affect us. And then now launching ICBMs, by the way, that can be reconfigured to have nuclear capability directly in, it's a problem.
Now, one of our dear friends of our program is Dr. Mirdad Kia, who is actually from Iran. And he is a professor at the University of Montana, and he called me a week or so ago and said that because of his contacts that are still in that country, he had heard that Iran had actually closed their airspace because they feared a direct attack from Israel on the country of Iran. Now, nothing has happened yet, but that story was confirmed by several international news sources that this may be happening. Do you have any word on that yourself?
Well, what is going to adjust Iran's behavior? And this is Iran is still sponsoring terrorism. Hamas went across October 7th, and to Israel, October 7th was much what 9/11 was to us. I mean, there is not a place on the planet that we would give sanctuary to those terrorists that knocked down those towers. I don't care where you are. And so Tehran thinks they can harbor Hamas, one of the key planners in there, and they're safe. My answer is no. If you're involved in those type of activities. Susan also asked, about the border. The border has been a problem a long time. When Trump administration went in, build a wall, look at what we're going to do, empower ICE. There were still people, coming over in the waves, but not as many. And now I think we incentivize bad behavior. There's a lot of wonderful people that have been waiting in line a long time, that we've been vetted, that would be instant value added to our community and our society, and yet they're waiting in line unprocessed while we're spending our resources processing people that are, not all, but there's enough that are being, empty the prisons out, which they are, empty the insane asylums out they are. We have over probably in the 1,000 range of terrorist people on the terrorist watch list. And they're coming to this country not to work. They're coming to this country to do harm. And people ask me, are you sure? I say, I've seen Hamas in Washington, D.C. I was there when Prime Minister Netanyahu gave his joint speech or did the joint session. And I was there when Hamas was in Union Station, tearing down flags and burning them in Washington, D.C. and defacing our monuments. I was there. So Hamas is here. Hamas isn't so much in Montana, but the effects of an open border are. And that can be fixed, and it has to be fixed. And look, there's drug trafficking, sex trafficking, fentanyl in almost every town and city across Montana. It doesn't have to be that way. But we got to get serious about it. And again, this is not going to come from both sides of the aisle. We got to figure out our immigration system to incentivize good behavior. Incentivize waiting in line, incentivize being a productive part of our society and being value added. That's what we should incentivize.
We're going to come right back. We have Rick and Brad both waiting to visit with Congressman Zinke. Several other phone lines are open, by the way. And you can also use the KGVO app, and we hope you will. It's very convenient to use. Just to hit the message us button, type in what you'd like to say, and shoot it off to us, and we'll be happy to pass that along to our guests. So we'll be right back after this.
The facts.
Thinking about retirement? Make sure a My Social Security account is a part of your plan. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can find out if you're eligible to receive benefits, compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates, view spousal benefit estimates, and more. Plan for your future. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Back. And once again, we're honored to have Congressman Ryan Zinke here in the studio with us, taking your phone calls as he is wont to do and he loves to do. So let's get right back to it.
I tell you that point, I love taking phone calls.
Yes.
I love going around because I do represent, right? And people may agree or disagree with me, but let's not be disagreeable. Let's be Montanans and talk about it, right? And it is goodness to be out and on the radio and listen to people and see what's on their mind. And if I can't answer it, I'll tell you I can't answer it. I'll find the answer. But I think it's a delightful experience.
Cool.
And I think anyone in politics ought to get the front line and talk to those that you say you're going to represent.
Well, let's make it delightful.
All right, here
Rick,
we go.
For Rick, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I don't know if Rick, I don't know if you've ever been called delightful before, but what's your question?
My question is, I'm 67 years old. I've just retired. When I was 19 years old, instead of buying rifles, snowmobiles, pickups, I invested in property. So I bought my first home when I was 19, and I collected rental houses over the years. And your opponent seems to think that if you buy property, you're a housing profiteer. I took my money. I divested all of my homes, sold them. I paid for my son's college education without having to take out any loans, which I wish I hadn't, because I guess sooner or later we're going to have all free college loans are going to be paid for. But my question is, at what point am I not considered a housing profiteer if I take and invest my own money and I buy homes and let people rent them from me? And the second question is, you've got my vote, but you'll never have my vote again if you do not do something about her going into your buildings and videotaping them and not taking her to court. And I would like to have your comments about that.
I will tell you this. He addressed that right out of the box at the top of the hour. And so, but if you want to go ahead and do it again, go ahead.
I will.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks for the call.
Okay.
In Montana, property rights matter. And God bless you for risking and investing in property. You're not a villain, you're a hero. Because I would imagine you on properties, you provide rentals on people that couldn't buy. So you provide a home and a living for people. And I assume that you're not a landlord scoundrel, that you provide housing too. In our family, we have a motto, we tend not to sell property. So we tend to, if that vacant lot is there, I might want it for my daughter. But the idea that someone would do an assessment of how big your house is, how do you have a spare bedroom? Is that lot next to you? Is it vacant? You should sell it. You should provide it for someone else. And look, property rights matter, right? And buying property sometimes is an investment. In our family case, it's a future. But no, you shouldn't be villainized for having a property or the car you drive. We live in a free society, and I will protect property rights to the very end because it's part of our DNA. But yet people want to tell you, what to do in your property. And look, in Montana, as long as you're not doing harm to your neighbor, I think you should have a wide variety of what you should be able to do with your property. It's yours, right? Be a steward of it and get a good guy. With Monica and those that are a lawsuit, we put in complaints for pull down, vicious lies on her on what's going on in the media, which it's been discredited by the city of Whitefish, et cetera. Lawsuits are a long ways, and we're considering action. Obviously my wife is part of it. She doesn't feel secure in the house, and kids are, not very comfortable about mowing the lawn in the front at the moment. But we'll get through it. One is we got to get the anger out, and I think the power of the vote's important. So I think Montana will look at it, and I get a report card every 2 years. I do my best. I do my duty to God and country. And it's not easy being in the House, but I'm an optimist. I think we can fix it. So that's why I serve, and I appreciate your vote.
Okay, let's get another call in. This is Brad. Brad, good morning. You're on with Congressman Zinke. Go ahead.
Good morning, Brad.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for taking my call. I just had a comment kind of about how the gun lobby pretty much demands Republican compliance to their beliefs. And like they don't like the ATF and their tracing center in West Virginia. And they want the whole thing disbanded. Well, I do believe what the ATF does is important when it comes to gun trafficking. I don't know if you've heard about this San Francisco 49ers player that got shot. That handgun was bought in Phoenix. The teenager used it in San Francisco. So in a period of about 7 months, because it was bought in February, how did it make it from Phoenix to San Francisco in a teenager's hand? And, you know, the gun lobby just thinks that it's all just a waste of time trying to figure that out.
Well, I can tell you, the gun lobby doesn't tell me what to do. Montana does. And Montana is a Second Amendment state where we appreciate our right to bear arms. And we appreciate law-abiding citizens' right. But when you got criminal elements out there that are hawking guns, circumnavigating law, the ATF, and I have a lot of ATF friends, they do an absolute tough job and an appropriate job, a job that's needed. So sometimes I pick on the leadership for either ignoring or not following the law or incompetence, which is my job. And as an appropriator, I also look at their budget. What are they spending money on? What is the IRS spending money on? Why does the IRS, an example, need more armaments than SEAL Team 6? What are they going after? And generally, when you're an IRS agent in Montana, you should contact that wonderful person called the local sheriff. And the local sheriff that knows that person, he should be the one on the front knocking on the door, and not an IRS agent that's armed to the teeth. So I think when it comes to law enforcement and Second Amendment and our rights, I stand firm in the Second Amendment, but I also stand firm on making sure criminals are not running around with weapon systems that can do us harm.
Okay, we're going to come right back. We have a 1-minute timeout standing by. We have an app question and calls from Sean and Emmett, who are both waiting to visit with Congressman Ryan Zinke here in the studio with us. We appreciate his time. We're going to come right back after this 1-minute timeout. We are back on Talk Back, and just a few precious minutes left with Ryan Zinke. And Nick, I know we have an app question or two.
Yeah, Matt said, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm for small government, and my only two hobbies are hunting and fishing. Do I have your word that you will never, ever sell our public land, state and federal?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My position has been consistent since I've been a state senator. I don't believe in selling or transferring public land. I do believe in managing it, because to sit here and watch our forest burn down year after year, to have our trail system atrophy, to rely on public access by Onyx, we can do a lot better at public access. And quite frankly, when I grew up, Montana was a little different. I didn't have to worry about public access. I didn't have to worry about fences. The Kelly humps didn't exist in Forest Service roads. And now public access and our ability as a public to enjoy our lands, I think, a lot of it is, let's take care of them. Let's make sure we don't burn them down. Let's make sure we have the right habitat. A lot of areas in Montana, the forests are dead under the canopy, and bears don't eat trees. So we need to manage it better, having diversity of species. And we have a lot of timber. We have a lot of pine, and pine sucks a lot of water down too. And so I think we can be a little smarter on grasses and maybe some aspen, and use best science to make sure our public lands are great. And, again, elk don't eat trees. So let's make sure we have our healthy forests up there. So when you go out, you have better than a 1% chance of putting that elk in your fridge. But yeah, you have my pledge. I've never believed in selling or transferring public land. Managing it, though, I think the state and local communities should have a greater voice in managing it. And a lot of times, management from D.C., if you don't know where the Yellowstone River is, maybe you shouldn't spend so much time thinking you can manage it well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Thanks. I appreciate the call.
Let's get another call in. This is Sean, I believe. Sean, good morning. You're on Talkback with Ryan Zinke. Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Zinke. How you doing?
Good morning, Sean.
Hey, I'd like to touch back on the illegal immigration thing real quick, if we could.
Sure.
Okay, so here's my thought process. We've got a massive influx, 10 million plus of illegal immigrants that are coming in, draining resources for citizens. But one thing that I think a lot of people are missing out on is the real big picture. And Republicans have bought into it hook, line, and sinker. They were busing, flying, transporting illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. And what is going to happen is in 2030, we are going to have another U.S. census. It is not going to ask you whether or not you are a U.S. citizen or not. It is going to ask you male, female, how many people are in the residence, et cetera, so that way they can get a body count. And what's going to happen is gerrymandering. The lines are going to be redrawn because those illegal immigrants have been put into Democratic districts and states, et cetera, which in turn is going to garner redrawing of the voting lines in favor of the Democrats.
Well, you bring up a very good point. The census.
Thanks for your call.
The census is not based on U.S. citizens. You are correct. The census is based on more or less living souls in an area. So that's why California swells in the number of congressional seats. And sometimes, remember, illegal aliens can't, by law, they cannot vote. Doesn't mean they don't. I'm saying by law they don't.
Doesn't mean they're not counted.
Right. Well, on a congressional district. Right. So there's some congressional districts. My district, the statewide, you have last primary was 300,000 voters, right? So you can have a small district that may only have 30 or 40,000 voters in it, because you know why? The district was made on living souls, but there's only so many voters in there, and so you do it. It is about power. And number of congressional districts based on population and not based on being a U.S. citizen, which can have the result, you're exactly right, of swaying the power base on what we call the swing states, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Carolinas. It can have an undue influence on the congressional district, which gives a skewed power, not based on citizens, but based on living souls.
All right. What we like to do here, we have about 3 minutes left in our time together, so I wish we could take another call. But what we like to do is, you're the candidate, so the people are listening. There's several thousand people out there listening right now to talk back. Why should they vote for Ryan Zinke?
Well, I'm an optimist. I look at the challenges we have facing our country, and Montana are significant. Let's just look at that and say, yes, they are. But I haven't seen anything that's not fixable. I guess, how we got here is we weren't paying attention. So it is time for all of us to pay attention. When a local library board becomes controversial in Montana, why? Well, there's probably some things in that elementary school that shouldn't be there. And how do they get there? Because we weren't paying attention. So I think we all got to pay attention. And look, if you believe in America and believe in our flag and stand and believe that we should have a strong military, that when we get involved, we win decisively in the field of battle and we come home. If you believe that boys should play boys and girls should play girls, and if you believe that Title IX, giving a young woman an opportunity to compete at the highest level, is a good thing. If you reject the idea of children having sex change operations, hormone therapy, puberty blockers as a child, if you reject that, then I'm asking for your vote. But again, I'm an optimist. Again, Montana is such a wonderful place to live, and the reason why we live here, we like the outdoors. And I want to see, like you, I want to see our outdoors protected. I want to see to the large we can, the same experience I grew up, to offer that same experience to your kids. I mean, you have a young grandson.
Yes, sir.
You know, I want him out there hunting too.
He's in Seattle, but hey,
you know, he'd come over. You know, get him over here. Get him over and enjoy the lake. But you know, like I get a report card every 2 years. I can tell you, I do my best. I do my duty. I do it to God and country. I do my best to look after Montanans. So I appreciate it, and I want everyone to realize that it snows in the way. So be careful out there driving, and God bless, folks.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, very
and thanks for taking all those calls, and thank you all to all the callers as well. So with that, we turn it over to Nick Christensen. Nick, what's coming up?
Yeah, Susie Hedeland, she's going to join us from 8 to 9. She's running for Office of Public Instruction. And then from 9 to 10, we have Jesse James Mullen. He is running for Secretary of State.
All right, so lots coming up. As we know, Nick knows it's a very busy time, so he's doing a great job producing. So have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.